Norris secures his first championship after a close call that could have ruined it. Verstappen snaps back at a huge question about the championship and all the latest F1 news. What happens when your teammate becomes world champion? Does everything change overnight? The answer from one Formula One driver might surprise you. After witnessing one of the most dramatic championship battles in recent memory, Oscar Piastri's reaction to his McLaren teammate Lando Norris clinching the 2025 Formula One World Championship reveals something fascinating about the mindset of elite competitors. Just last weekend in Abu Dhabi, Formula One witnessed an incredible conclusion to what has been an absolutely electric championship fight. Lando Norris secured his first world championship by finishing third at the Yas Marina circuit, edging out Max Verstappen by just 2 points in what was one of the closest title battles we've seen in years. But here's what makes this story particularly compelling. Norris beat his own teammate, Oscar Piastri, to claim that title. Imagine being in Piastri's shoes for a moment. You're sitting in an identical car to your teammate. You've been pushing each other to the absolute limit all season long, and ultimately, he comes out on top to become world champion while you finish third in the standings. How would you react? Would there be bitterness, resentment, a sense that everything would now change between you and your teammate? Well, Piastri's response tells us everything we need to know about the mentality required to compete at the highest level of motorsport. Rather than dwelling on what might have been, the Australian driver demonstrated remarkable sportsmanship and provided insight into how he views his relationship with his now world champion teammate going forward. The 2025 season has been nothing short of extraordinary for both McLaren drivers. What many people don't realize is that Piastri actually led the championship standings by a substantial margin earlier in the year. After the Dutch Grand Prix in August, the Melbourne native held a commanding 34-point lead at the top of the drivers' standings. This wasn't just a brief moment in the sun. Piastri had genuinely been the championship frontrunner for a significant portion of the season. But Formula One has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. A pivotal moment came at Monza, where McLaren made the strategic decision to swap positions between their drivers after Norris encountered a delayed pit stop. This team order proved to be a crucial turning point in the championship fight, but it was what happened next that really shifted the momentum. Azerbaijan turned into an absolute nightmare weekend for Piastri. Sometimes in Formula One, everything that can go wrong does go wrong, and that's exactly what happened to the young Australian in Baku. The disastrous weekend completely derailed his championship campaign and handed the initiative back to his competitors. The struggles continued in both the United States and Mexico, where Piastri found himself battling for pace, while Norris hit his stride and Verstappen mounted his own comeback challenge. It's fascinating how quickly fortunes can change in Formula One. One weekend you're leading the championship, and a few races later you're watching it slip away. By the time the checkered flag fell in Abu Dhabi, the final standings told the story of an incredibly tight championship battle. Norris finished with 423 points, Verstappen with 421, and Piastri with 410. Just 13 points separated first from third place after an entire season of racing. That's how close this championship fight really was. What's particularly interesting about the Abu Dhabi race itself is how it unfolded. Piastri actually started the race brilliantly, making a spectacular move around the outside of turn 9 on the opening lap to overtake his teammate and move into second place. For a moment, it looked like he might play spoiler to both Norris's championship hopes and Verstappen's race win aspirations. Once in second place, Piastri couldn't quite match the pace of Verstappen, who largely controlled the race from the front. But even though he couldn't challenge for the win, Piastri still played a crucial strategic role in the championship outcome. His choice to run the hard compound tires created strategic limitations for Red Bull and potentially helped secure his teammates' championship victory. Think about that for a moment. Here's a driver who could have easily adopted a selfish approach, knowing that his own championship hopes were essentially over. Instead, he continued to race professionally and even contributed to his teammates' success. That level of professionalism speaks volumes about his character and approach to competition. But perhaps the most revealing aspect of this entire story is Piastri's reaction after the championship was decided. Speaking to media after the race, his comments were gracious, honest, and provided fascinating insight into how he views the dynamic within the McLaren team moving forward. Piastri acknowledged that Norris had been the deserving champion, recognizing the quality of season his teammate had delivered. He spoke about how they had pushed each other throughout their 3 years as teammates, with this season being particularly intense as they battled not just against other teams, but against each other for the ultimate prize. What struck me most about his comments was the honesty with which he assessed the season. Rather than making excuses or dwelling on the moments where things went wrong, Piastri simply acknowledged that both drivers had experienced ups and downs at different points throughout the year, but ultimately Norris had done the better job over the course of the entire campaign. But here's where things get really interesting. When asked about how the team dynamic might change now that Norris is world champion, Piastri's response was both refreshing and telling. He made it clear that despite his teammates' championship success, he doesn't expect the fundamental relationship between them to change. The key quote that really captures Piastri's mindset is when he said that while Norris had obviously delivered a great season and was a deserving champion, he's still the same Lando Norris and hasn't become some sort of superhuman figure. This perspective reveals something important about how elite athletes view success and competition. In many sports, when someone achieves the ultimate prize, there can be a tendency for team dynamics to shift dramatically. The champion might receive preferential treatment, or other team members might defer to them in ways they hadn't before. Piastri's comments suggest he's not anticipating or accepting any such changes within McLaren. He emphasized his expectation of continued fairness and equality from the team, making it clear that he doesn't believe Norris's championship should fundamentally alter how McLaren operates internally. This isn't just about stubbornness or refusing to acknowledge his teammates' achievement. It's about maintaining the competitive environment that helped produce a world champion in the first place. This attitude also reveals something important about Piastri's own ambitions and self-belief. By insisting that the team dynamic shouldn't change, he's essentially saying that he still believes he can compete with and beat his world champion teammate. That level of confidence and competitive drive is exactly what you'd expect from someone operating at the pinnacle of motorsport. The broader implications of this story extend beyond just these two drivers. McLaren now finds itself in the enviable but challenging position of managing two elite drivers who are both capable of fighting for championships. How they handle this dynamic will be crucial not just for the drivers involved, but for the team's continued success. Looking ahead to next season, this championship battle between teammates has set up what could be an even more intense rivalry. Norris will enter as the defending champion, carrying all the expectations and pressures that come with that status. Meanwhile, Piastri will be motivated by the experience of coming so close to the title and will undoubtedly be hungry to go one better. What makes this particularly fascinating is that both drivers are still relatively young in their Formula One careers. Norris is now a world champion, but at just 25 years old, he's likely got many more years ahead of him. Piastri, at 24, has already shown he can compete for championships and has plenty of time to achieve his own title dreams. The competitive fire that drives these athletes is something that's difficult for most of us to truly comprehend. To come as close as Piastri did to winning a world championship and then have to watch his teammates celebrate that achievement requires an incredible level of mental strength and professionalism. Yet rather than letting this experience break him or create lasting resentment, Piastri appears to be using it as fuel for future motivation. His gracious response to defeat, combined with his clear determination to maintain competitive parity within the team, suggests that McLaren's internal battle is far from over. This story also highlights something beautiful about competitive sport at its highest level. Despite the intense rivalry and the massive stakes involved, there's still room for genuine respect and sportsmanship between competitors. Piastri's acknowledgement of his teammates' deserving victory, while simultaneously making clear his intention to continue fighting on equal terms, embodies the best aspects of athletic competition. As we look toward the future, one thing is certain: the McLaren garage is going to be a fascinating place to watch. With two drivers who have now proven they can fight for championships, and with Piastri clearly not content to play second fiddle to his newly crowned champion teammate, the stage is set for what could be an epic internal rivalry. The real winner in all of this might just be Formula One fans who get to witness this compelling dynamic playout over the coming seasons. What if I told you that a single moment of poor judgment cost one of Formula One's greatest drivers his 5th world championship? And what if that driver just delivered the most explosive response to criticism you'll see all season? Max Verstappen has just fired back at journalists in the most dramatic way possible after losing the 2025 Formula One World Championship by just 2 points to Lando Norris. The spotlight isn't on his incredible victory in Abu Dhabi or his phenomenal season-long battle with McLaren. Instead, everyone's talking about one controversial crash that happened 6 months ago in Barcelona. This is the story of how 9 lost points in Spain became the defining narrative of Verstappen's championship defeat, and why his response reveals everything about the mentality that's made him one of the sport's most polarizing figures. Let's rewind to June 2025 in Barcelona. The Spanish Grand Prix was unfolding as another typical mid-season race when suddenly, everything changed. Verstappen, running in 5th position, made a split-second decision that would haunt him for the rest of the championship fight. In what appeared to be an intentional move, he collided with George Russell, sending both drivers into the barriers and triggering a massive controversy. The incident looked aggressive, reckless even. Verstappen later admitted it was a mistake, but the damage was done. Race stewards handed him a 10-second penalty that dropped him from 5th place all the way down to 10th. Those lost positions cost him 9 crucial championship points. 9 points that would prove to be the exact margin of his eventual championship defeat. Fast forward to December in Abu Dhabi, and Verstappen did everything humanly possible to claim that elusive 5th title. He dominated the final race, showcasing the raw pace and racecraft that's defined his career. But mathematics doesn't lie. When the checkered flag fell, Lando Norris had secured his first world championship by the narrowest of margins, just 2 points ahead of the Dutch superstar. What happened next in the media pen was pure theater. As journalists gathered around the race winner, one reporter couldn't resist bringing up the elephant in the room: the Barcelona crash, the 9 lost points, the what-if scenario that had dominated championship discussions for months. Verstappen's response was explosive. His frustration, built up over months of the same narrative, finally erupted. He didn't just answer the question, he dismantled it with the precision of a championship-caliber driver dissecting a racing line. "You forget all the other stuff that happened in my season," he snapped back, his voice carrying the weight of 24 races worth of effort. "The only thing you mentioned is Barcelona. I knew that would come. You're giving me a stupid grin now." This wasn't just anger talking. This was a masterclass in perspective from someone who understands Formula One better than most. Verstappen immediately shifted the narrative from a single incident to the broader context of an entire championship campaign. It's part of racing in the end. You live and learn. Championship is one of 24 rounds, he continued, his words cutting through the oversimplified narrative that had dominated headlines. But then came the knockout punch that revealed just how deep his understanding of the sport really goes. "I've also had a lot of early Christmas presents given to me in the second half, so you can also question that." This statement is absolutely crucial to understanding why Verstappen's response is so significant. He's not denying that Barcelona cost him points. He's not making excuses. Instead, he's demonstrating the mental maturity that separates championship-level drivers from the rest of the field. He's acknowledging that over 24 races, fortune swings both ways. Think about what this means. Verstappen is essentially saying that while Barcelona hurt him, other incidents throughout the season benefited him. Maybe it was a safety car that fell perfectly, a competitor's mechanical failure, or a strategic gamble that paid off when it shouldn't have. In his mind, these moments balance out over a full championship campaign. This perspective reveals something profound about how elite athletes process setbacks and success. Lesser drivers might have dwelled on Barcelona, letting it consume their thoughts and affect their performance. Verstappen filed it away as one data point among hundreds that make up a Formula One season. But the story doesn't end with his verbal counterattack. When pressed about whether this had been his best season despite losing the championship, Verstappen's response painted a picture of just how challenging this year had been behind the scenes. "I have no regrets in my season," he stated firmly. "I think the performance has been strong. I've hated this car at times, but I've also loved it at times, and I always try to extract the most of it, even in the difficult weekends that we have had." This admission gives us a rare glimpse into the reality of modern Formula One. Even for drivers of Verstappen's caliber, the cars aren't always cooperative. The technology is so complex, the margins so fine, that even championship-contending machinery can feel like a handful on certain weekends. He described the season as a proper roller coaster with the car, revealing that his championship challenge wasn't just about fighting other drivers, but constantly adapting to a machine that changed character from circuit to circuit. This adaptability, this ability to extract performance even when the car isn't behaving, is what separates the truly great drivers from the merely talented. The emotional honesty in his assessment is striking. "Luckily, the last 8 or 9 rounds in general have been a lot more enjoyable," he reflected, suggesting that the early part of the season was a genuine struggle, both mechanically and mentally. What makes this revelation even more impressive is the context of how the championship unfolded. Despite admitting to hating his car at times, despite the Barcelona setback, despite all the challenges, Verstappen still came within 2 points of a 5th consecutive world title. That's not just talent, that's championship-level mental resilience. His comments about the team atmosphere in the final stages of the season also reveal something important about Red Bull Racing's culture. "We have a great atmosphere at the moment. We are really on a roll. Positive energy, belief, confidence, and that's exactly what you want heading into next year." This suggests that rather than letting the championship defeat crush team morale, Red Bull has found a way to use it as motivation. The fact that Verstappen is already looking ahead to next season with optimism rather than dwelling on what might have been shows the kind of forward-thinking mentality that builds dynasties in Formula One. But perhaps the most telling aspect of Verstappen's entire response is what it reveals about the modern media landscape surrounding Formula One. In an era of instant analysis and hot takes, there's an irresistible urge to find simple explanations for complex outcomes. The Barcelona crash provides that narrative simplicity that everyone craves. The reality is far more nuanced. Championships aren't won or lost in single moments. They're the cumulative result of hundreds of decisions, thousands of setup adjustments, and countless split-second reactions over the course of an entire season. Verstappen understands this better than most, which is why his frustration with the oversimplified narrative is so palpable. His response also highlights a broader truth about elite sports psychology. The ability to compartmentalize setbacks while maintaining accountability is what separates champions from everyone else. Verstappen isn't making excuses for Barcelona, but he's refusing to let that single incident define 23 other races worth of effort and achievement. As we look ahead to the 2026 season, Verstappen's response in Abu Dhabi might be the most important moment of his championship defeat. It shows a driver who remains hungry, motivated, and clear-eyed about what it takes to win at the highest level of motorsport. The question isn't whether Verstappen will bounce back from this defeat. Based on his response, that seems inevitable. The question is whether his competitors are ready for a driver who's channeled the frustration of losing a championship by 2 points into fuel for an even stronger campaign. Sometimes the most revealing moments in sport don't happen during competition. They happen in the aftermath, when the adrenaline fades and true character emerges. In Abu Dhabi, Max Verstappen showed exactly why he'll remain one of Formula One's most formidable competitors for years to come. What if one of the greatest Formula One drivers of all time just hinted at hanging up his helmet for good? Lewis Hamilton's recent comments after the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix have sent shockwaves through the racing world, and what he said might surprise you. The 7-time world champion didn't deny retirement rumors when given the perfect opportunity, and his exact words have left fans and pundits scrambling for answers. Picture this: You're arguably the most successful driver in Formula One history. You've just endured your worst season ever, and reporters are asking if you're ready to call it quits. Most drivers would immediately shut down those rumors, right? Well, Hamilton didn't. Instead, he said something that has everyone talking, and by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why his Ferrari dream might be turning into a nightmare that could end his legendary career. Let's dive into what really happened in Abu Dhabi and why Hamilton's cryptic responses are making headlines around the world. The 2025 season was supposed to be Hamilton's triumphant return to glory with Ferrari, the team he'd dreamed of driving for since childhood. Instead, it became a season he'll want to forget. For the first time in his entire Formula One career, Hamilton failed to finish on a single podium. Think about that for a moment. This is a man who has won more races than almost anyone in history, and he couldn't even manage a third-place finish across an entire season. The statistics tell a brutal story. Hamilton finished a staggering 86 points behind his teammate Charles Leclerc, a gap that speaks volumes about just how much he struggled to adapt to the Ferrari car. While Leclerc was fighting for race wins and podium finishes, Hamilton was often battling in the midfield, looking like a shadow of his former self. The move to Ferrari, which was meant to rejuvenate his career and add an 8th world championship to his collection, instead became a source of frustration and disappointment. But here's where things get really interesting. After the season finale in Abu Dhabi, when journalists had the perfect opportunity to ask Hamilton about his future and those persistent retirement rumors, his response was anything but reassuring for fans hoping to see him continue racing. Instead of firmly denying any thoughts of retirement, Hamilton chose his words carefully, and what he said has left everyone wondering if we've already seen the last of this Formula One legend. When asked directly about advice from former drivers like Nico Rosberg, who suggested he should stick it out despite the difficult season, Hamilton's response was telling. He essentially brushed off any external opinions, stating that none of these pundits have achieved what he has achieved in the sport. This wasn't just confidence talking. It was a man who seemed tired of having to justify his decisions and performance to others. But the most revealing moment came when Hamilton started talking about what he was looking forward to during the winter break. This wasn't your typical athlete discussing rest and recovery. Hamilton spoke about wanting to completely disconnect from everything related to Formula One. He mentioned throwing his phone in the bin, unplugging from what he called the Matrix, and getting away from all the obligations that come with being a top-level racing driver. What really caught everyone's attention was when Hamilton started talking about photo shoots and media obligations. These aren't just casual comments. They're insights into the mind of someone who might be reaching the end of his rope with the demands of professional racing. Hamilton specifically mentioned looking forward to the day when he no longer has to do photo shoots and all the other activities that come with being a Formula One driver. That's not the language of someone planning to continue for years to come. The context makes these comments even more significant. This isn't just about one bad race or even one disappointing result. Hamilton has been racing at the highest level for nearly 2 decades. He's achieved everything there is to achieve in Formula One multiple times over. He's broken records, made history, and cemented his legacy as one of the greatest drivers ever to sit in a cockpit. At some point, even legends start to question whether the grind is still worth it. Think about the pressure Hamilton faces every single weekend. He's not just any driver, he's Lewis Hamilton. Every move he makes is scrutinized, every result is analyzed, and every performance is compared to his incredible past achievements. When you're used to winning races and championships, finishing outside the points becomes not just disappointing but genuinely difficult to accept. The Ferrari move was supposed to change everything. Hamilton left Mercedes, the team where he won 6 of his 7 world championships, specifically to chase that elusive 8th title with the most iconic team in Formula One history. But instead of finding renewed success, he found himself struggling with a car that didn't suit his driving style and fighting for positions he hadn't been in for years. What makes this situation even more complex is Hamilton's age and what he has left to prove. At 40 years old, he's already the oldest driver on the current grid. While age is just a number in many sports, Formula One demands split-second reflexes, incredible physical fitness, and the mental fortitude to handle speeds that would terrify most people. Even the greatest drivers eventually reach a point where the combination of physical demands and lack of competitive machinery makes continuing seem less appealing. The financial aspect also plays a role in these discussions. Hamilton has earned hundreds of millions of dollars throughout his career. He's financially secure for multiple lifetimes and has business interests outside of racing that could easily occupy his time and attention. When you have that level of financial freedom, the motivation to continue putting your body and mind through the rigors of Formula One has to come from pure passion and competitive drive. Hamilton's comments about disconnecting completely during the winter break suggest someone who needs serious time to evaluate whether that passion still burns strong enough to justify continuing. The fact that he's planning to be completely unreachable, throwing away his phone and avoiding all contact with the racing world, indicates this isn't just a standard off-season break. This sounds like someone who needs to step back and gain perspective on what they really want from the next phase of their life. The broader context of Formula One also matters here. The sport has changed dramatically since Hamilton first started racing. The cars are different, the regulations have evolved, and a new generation of incredibly talented drivers has emerged. Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, and others represent the future of the sport, and they're all hungry for victories and championships. For Hamilton, competing against these younger drivers while dealing with an uncompetitive car creates a perfect storm of frustration. From a legacy perspective, Hamilton has nothing left to prove. He's already considered one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history. His records speak for themselves, and his impact on the sport extends far beyond just racing results. He's been a powerful voice for diversity and social justice, using his platform to promote positive change. Perhaps he's reached a point where he feels his influence and legacy are secure, regardless of what happens next on the track. The timing of these retirement hints is also significant. Hamilton's current Ferrari contract runs through the 2026 season, but contracts in Formula One can be terminated or modified if both parties agree. If Hamilton is seriously considering retirement, the winter break provides the perfect opportunity for him and Ferrari to have those conversations privately, away from media attention and speculation. What happens next could define not just Hamilton's legacy, but also the immediate future of Formula One. If he does decide to retire, it would create a massive void in the sport. Hamilton isn't just a driver. He's a global superstar whose presence brings attention, sponsorship money, and international interest to Formula One. His retirement would mark the end of an era and force the sport to fully transition to its next generation of stars. For now, all we can do is wait and see what Hamilton decides during his period of complete disconnection from the racing world. His cryptic comments and refusal to shut down retirement rumors have created a cloud of uncertainty that will hang over Formula One until he makes his intentions clear. Whether he returns in 2026 refreshed and ready to fight for another championship or announces his retirement to pursue other interests, one thing is certain. Lewis Hamilton's next decision will be one of the most significant moments in recent Formula One history. The sport that made him a legend now awaits his choice, and whatever he decides will shape the future of Formula One for years to come. The Formula One world is buzzing with speculation about one of its most influential figures potentially stepping away from the sport. After 2 decades of shaping Red Bull Racing's destiny, Helmut Marko finds himself at a crossroads that could fundamentally alter the team's future direction. Picture this scenario for a moment. You're 82 years old. You've dedicated the last 20 years of your life to building one of the most successful teams in Formula One history, and suddenly you're questioning whether it's time to walk away. That's exactly where Helmut Marko stands today, and his next decision could send shockwaves through the entire paddock. The Austrian power broker dropped a bombshell following Max Verstappen's championship battle loss to Lando Norris in Abu Dhabi. When pressed about his future with Red Bull Racing, Marko's response was unusually uncertain for someone known for his direct communication style. He admitted needing to sleep on his decision about continuing with the team, a statement that immediately caught the attention of Formula One insiders worldwide. What makes this situation particularly fascinating is the timing. Red Bull Racing has undergone massive organizational changes throughout the season, with the most significant being the departure of longtime team principal Christian Horner. Laurent Mekies stepped into that role during the summer, representing a fundamental shift in how Red Bull's parent company wants to operate their Formula One program. Marko represents the last remaining connection to the original Red Bull racing structure that existed when company founder Dietrich Mateschitz was alive. His position as advisor to Red Bull Racing from the parent company has given him considerable influence over driver development programs and strategic decisions for the past 2 decades. However, sources within the organization suggest that his relationship with the new power structure has become increasingly strained. The tension appears to stem from conflicting visions about how the team should operate moving forward. Oliver Mintzlaff, representing Red Bull's corporate interests, and Laurent Mekies, bringing fresh leadership perspectives, seem to favor a more centralized approach to decision-making. This contrasts sharply with Marko's traditional method of operating with significant autonomy, particularly regarding junior driver program selections. Industry insiders have revealed that succession planning for Marko's eventual departure has been under consideration for several months. Names like Sebastian Vettel and Gerhard Berger have been tentatively discussed as potential replacements, though nothing concrete has been established. The fact that such conversations are happening suggests that Red Bull's leadership team has been preparing for this possibility well before Marko's recent public uncertainty. The situation became more complicated during the Qatar Grand Prix weekend when Marko made controversial comments regarding young driver Kimi Antonelli. These remarks reportedly inflamed an already tense situation and may have accelerated discussions about his future role within the organization. The incident highlights how even minor controversies can have major implications when relationships are already strained. What's particularly intriguing about Marko's current position is how it reflects broader changes happening within Red Bull's Formula One operations. The company's decision to remove Christian Horner after more than 20 years clearly signaled a desire to bring more direct control back to the parent organization. This shift in philosophy naturally puts someone like Marko, who has operated with considerable independence, in a potentially uncomfortable position. Laurent Mekies has been diplomatic when discussing the situation, praising Marko's contributions to the team's turnaround during what was initially a challenging season. However, he hasn't ruled out organizational changes, emphasizing that Formula One teams must constantly evolve and adapt to remain competitive. His comments suggest that while Marko's experience is valued, no one's position is guaranteed in the fast-moving world of Formula One. The timing of these developments is particularly significant given Red Bull's recent championship battles. The team has experienced both triumph and frustration in recent seasons, with Max Verstappen's individual success sometimes overshadowing broader organizational challenges. Having someone of Marko's experience and institutional knowledge question his future adds another layer of uncertainty to an already complex situation. For Red Bull Racing, losing Marko would mean saying goodbye to someone who has been instrumental in identifying and developing young talent. His oversight of the junior driver program has produced multiple Formula One drivers and has been a cornerstone of Red Bull's long-term competitive strategy. Finding someone with similar expertise and track record would be challenging, regardless of how strained current relationships might be. The broader Formula One community is watching this situation closely because it represents more than just a personnel change. Marko's potential departure would symbolize the end of an era for Red Bull Racing, marking a complete transition from the Dietrich Mateschitz era to whatever comes next. This kind of generational change often brings significant shifts in team culture and operational philosophy. From a strategic perspective, the uncertainty surrounding Marko's future creates interesting questions about Red Bull's direction heading into the new regulation cycle beginning in 2026. Major personnel changes during transitional periods can either provide fresh perspectives or create disruption at crucial moments. The timing of any decision will be critical for maintaining stability while adapting to new challenges. What makes this situation even more compelling is Marko's own apparent ambivalence about his future. His admission that he needs time to consider his options suggests genuine uncertainty rather than strategic positioning. After decades in the sport, he's clearly weighing multiple factors beyond just professional considerations. The human element of this story shouldn't be overlooked either. At 82 years old, Marko has already achieved more in Formula One than most people could dream of. His decision about whether to continue will likely involve personal considerations about legacy, energy levels, and whether he still feels he can contribute effectively to the team's success. As the Formula One world waits for Marko's decision, one thing remains clear. Whatever he chooses will have lasting implications for Red Bull Racing's future direction. Whether he decides to continue fighting for his vision of the team or steps aside to let new leadership take control, his choice will mark a defining moment in Red Bull's Formula One journey. The next few weeks promise to be fascinating as this veteran of the sport weighs his options and Red Bull's leadership team prepares for whatever decision emerges from his contemplation. Is Charles Leclerc about to walk away from Ferrari? The Monegasque driver just dropped his most explosive comments yet. And trust me, this could change everything we know about Formula One's most iconic partnership. After another season of crushing disappointment, Leclerc has essentially given Ferrari an ultimatum that should send shockwaves through Maranello. Picture this. You're one of the most talented drivers on the grid. You've been loyal to the most famous team in motorsport for years, and yet you keep watching other drivers celebrate championship victories while you're stuck fighting for scraps. That's exactly where Charles Leclerc finds himself right now, and his patience is running dangerously thin. The 2025 season just concluded with Leclerc finishing a devastating 5th in the Drivers' Championship. 5th. For a driver of his caliber, driving for Ferrari, that's nothing short of catastrophic. And when the cameras rolled after the final race in Abu Dhabi, Leclerc didn't hold back. His message to Ferrari was crystal clear: fix this mess or I'm gone. But before we dive into what this means for the future, let's talk about how we got here. Ferrari has become the master of false hope. Season after season, they build up expectations during winter testing, promise championship fights, and then deliver heartbreak after heartbreak. It's like watching the same tragic movie on repeat, except this time, their leading man might just walk off set. The Abu Dhabi Grand Prix perfectly encapsulated Ferrari's season. Leclerc showed unexpected pace in the final race, reminding everyone just how quick he can be when the car cooperates. But that's exactly the problem. Ferrari's car is completely unpredictable. One weekend they're battling for pole position, the next they're struggling to make it into the points. How do you build a championship campaign on such inconsistency? You don't, and Leclerc knows it. When asked about his thoughts on the upcoming 2026 season, Leclerc's response was loaded with frustration and barely contained ultimatum energy. He acknowledged that the whole team is motivated for next year, which sounds positive on the surface, but then came the bomb. It's now or never. Those 4 words carry more weight than any contract negotiation or boardroom meeting ever could. Think about what he's really saying here. The 2026 regulation changes represent a massive reset button for Formula One. Every team starts from scratch with new technical regulations, and historically, these moments create opportunities for dramatic shifts in the competitive order. Leclerc sees this as Ferrari's last realistic chance to get things right before another multi-year cycle of dominance by someone else. His confidence in this being a make-or-break moment is chilling when you consider his next comment. Leclerc believes that by race 6 or 7 of 2026, everyone will know which teams will dominate for the next 4 years. That's an incredibly short window for Ferrari to prove they deserve his continued loyalty. The psychological pressure on Ferrari right now must be immense. They're not just trying to build a competitive car, they're trying to save their relationship with one of the sport's brightest talents. And here's what makes this even more dramatic. Ferrari has already lost one superstar this season with Lewis Hamilton's struggles and public complaints about the team's direction. Speaking of Hamilton, his presence at Ferrari was supposed to elevate everything. 7-time world champion, proven winner, the guy who could supposedly teach Ferrari how to win again. Instead, Hamilton has been openly frustrated with the team's performance and decision-making. When your legend driver is publicly voicing complaints and your young star is talking about ultimatums, you know something is seriously broken. The rumors about Leclerc having an exit clause in his contract suddenly make a lot more sense now. Smart drivers and their management teams always include escape routes when signing long-term deals, especially with teams that have struggled with consistency. If those reports are true, Leclerc might already have one foot out the door legally. But where would he go? That's the million-dollar question that could reshape the entire driver market. Red Bull has Max Verstappen locked up, but their second seat could become available. Mercedes might need a new star if Hamilton decides to retire. McLaren has emerged as genuine contenders. Suddenly, every top team becomes a potential destination for a frustrated Ferrari driver. The timing of all this is fascinating. We're at the end of a regulation cycle, about to enter a new era where everything could change. Teams that have struggled might suddenly find the key to success, while dominant teams might lose their edge. For Leclerc, jumping ship right before this reset could be either brilliant strategy or terrible timing. Ferrari's leadership must be sweating bullets right now. Chairman John Elkann recently made some controversial comments criticizing both Leclerc and Hamilton, which probably didn't help team morale. When your drivers are already frustrated, publicly criticizing them seems like a masterclass in how to lose talent. The pressure extends beyond just keeping Leclerc happy. Ferrari's entire identity is built around being championship contenders. They're not just another racing team, they're Ferrari. The expectation level is stratospheric, and anything less than fighting for titles is considered failure. But expectations without results eventually lead to talent walking away. Looking at Leclerc's career trajectory, this moment represents a crossroads. He's still young enough to have multiple championship opportunities, but he's also experienced enough to know that staying with an underperforming team could waste his prime years. Drivers like Fernando Alonso have shown what happens when you spend too long hoping for improvement that never comes. The emotional toll of the situation can't be understated. When Leclerc talks about forgetting negative emotions as quickly as possible, you can hear the exhaustion in his voice. This isn't just about racing. It's about years of built-up frustration, dashed hopes, and watching opportunities slip away. Ferrari has roughly 6 months to prove they've learned from their mistakes. The 2026 car development is happening right now, and every decision they make could determine whether they keep their star driver or watch him drive for a competitor. No pressure at all, right? The implications stretch far beyond just one driver contract. If Leclerc leaves Ferrari, it sends a message to every other top driver that even the most iconic teams aren't immune to talent drain. It could trigger a domino effect throughout the driver market and fundamentally change how teams approach driver relationships. For Formula One fans, this drama adds another layer to an already compelling sport. We're potentially watching the end of one of the most anticipated partnerships in recent memory. Leclerc was supposed to be Ferrari's future, their return to championship glory. Instead, he might become a cautionary tale about the cost of broken promises. The now or never ultimatum isn't just about 2026, it's about Ferrari's soul. Can the most famous team in motorsport remember how to win consistently? Can they provide their drivers with cars worthy of their talent? Or will they continue this cycle of hope and disappointment until every star driver looks elsewhere? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. Ferrari's next few months will determine whether they keep their prince or watch him become someone else's king. The clock is ticking, and Charles Leclerc has made it very clear he's not waiting forever.